Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it and like us on Facebook at The Creepin' It Real Show. Do you have a paranormal story you'd like to share with us? You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com.
Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show. This week, it will be your host with the most, Christy. And with me, I also have Yardley. How are you doing, Yardley?
Everything's good. It's a little bit hotter here in Atlanta, and it appears that all next week is going to be in the mid-90s.
Wow.
Up to 100, yeah. So I'm going to enjoy this little bit of, 89 while I can.
Yeah, we went and picked up the boat yesterday and brought it home to clean it out and there's usually like families of wasps that settle in it and stuff while over the winter, and it was freaking hot. Like, it was, just standing outside cleaning it on the driveway. So we were really wishing we were actually on the lake. But I hear ya. Moni from Cali, how are you?
I'm good. Did we switch weather? Because it is cold and raining here today. And I'm supposed to have an open house for selling my home. And people don't, in California, we can't function in the rain. So my realtor's all upset because she's like, nobody's going to come in the rain. So damn it, California. Where's that weather?
We'd all crawl in a hole and starve to death if we couldn't function in the rain over here. It would be like, well, it rains like 40% of the time, so
we'll get there. We've
screwed.
had a lot of rain for us, not heavy rain, but the past 2 weeks has rained almost every day, and so it's just like, and we start crashing our cars, and like it's just ridiculous.
That is, unfortunately, even with as much rain as we get here, we still have stupid drivers that cannot handle like one raindrop, and so there's like usually tons of automobile accidents when it rains a lot. But then on the other hand, in the summer, when Yardley was talking in the high 90s, it's like a war zone because people's cars literally catch on fire. So you're like driving down the highway and you look over and there's just cars on fire because it's so hot. And you're like, okay.
Wow.
A lot higher here than out on the side, Moni.
Oh, yeah. Oh, girl, don't ever come visit in the summer. Unless you're just going to be on the lake the entire time.
Humidity is what I hear really gets you, because we don't get that out here, is that humidity most of the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's like humid and steaming hot, and just walking from your door to your mailbox, you're like drenched in sweat.
Ew.
So it's not fun. But hey, it is what it is. I like the ATL. We just got some fucked up stuff every once in a while. So, before we get started on the show, I would love to give a huge cheers with my coffee and a shout out to our listeners and then also my two co-hosts, because by the time this episode plays, we'll have hit 100,000 downloads. And I remember literally a little over a year ago us celebrating 10,000 downloads and like being so excited. So in a year, that's quite a bit of growth. So we appreciate it, and just wanted to give a little celebration here before we get started. So I'm going to sip my coffee and say thank you. And on to the weird news. I'm going to keep yours to last, Moni, because it kind of is a great segue into the main event.
Yes.
Yardley, I watched this video. I am so excited now after watching this video. What do you got here?
Well, I had dropped something on the show page about Orion. They recently released a Chucky Behind the Scenes clip. It's around 4 minutes long, and it gets into the process of how they made Chucky and what direction that they're trying to go as far as the representation of this particular iteration of the character is concerned. So what we learned in the video is the puppet itself is mostly animatronic. Most of the digital work that they're going to do is going to be for the eyes. And we all know, they say the eyes are the keys to the soul. And I think that that's one of the major reasons why when they redesigned the doll, they went with the bigger eyes, and the fact that they're going to digitally enhance probably some of the, expressions in the eyes and things like that. I think it's going to be interesting. But what makes it even better is the fact that that this thing, they're fully going all in on the animatronics. I think they said that they have up to 6 people that are working, the puppet.
6
So
people, and there's 6 different dolls too.
yeah,
So that's crazy.
it's pretty cool, and it's pretty short. And there were a couple of things where they had some segments where you briefly hear the actors talk about it, and they keep talking about everybody's in the cloud, and we were discussing what all could this Chucky do, and the fact that we're connected to so much stuff. And I think off the top of my head, it is Caslin Corp, right, that made the Chucky doll. It's Caslin, right?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
But I think that the route that they're going is that this is a mega company, and there are so many different houses and automobiles, and all of these things are synced up through that company, which I think is going to make Chucky's reach even further than just kind of terrorizing, the people who are in that house. It's going to affect so many people. So I think that this is going to be a new great take on it. And like I said, check out the video. You can go to Orion Pictures YouTube, or you can go to our Facebook page. We have it posted there.
Oh, awesome. I was getting ready to ask you if you shared it to our Facebook page. I was reading the comments in the YouTube video that you shared that we were just talking about, and a lot of people are like, is it just me, or is this doll weird looking? And I agree. It is weird looking. And I stand by, it's only in the stills that he looks weird. When he's moving in the videos, he doesn't look that weird to me. It's only in photos. And I'm wondering if that's, I think it probably is the eyes that kind of do it, because they are so big. But
well, in the face, Moni, what was your opinion on this? I think the face is a lot flatter, it seems, than the other doll.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's different about him, because I think his eyebrows probably kind of come together closer, and yeah, his face does seem like it's pretty flat, but then he's got a lot of forehead real estate. I don't know.
Well, the eyes. I mean, the whole thing I think that kind of throws you from the previous Chucky is, like I said, they want you to focus on the eyes, and I think I've seen some clips. It wasn't necessarily in this 4-minute behind the scenes doc, but there is a clip of his eyes being all red. Like when he gets really mad, they turn red instead of, like bright red. I saw a picture of that, or like a brief clip of it, and it looks pretty, it looks pretty scary. So I have faith that they can pull off something at least as good as the other ones, if that's saying much.
I think it'll be way better. I think the concept is way better than the original, and like you said, you get so many opportunities to reach other people, and just total technology gone horribly wrong. I think the only thing that bugs me about this doll that I wish they had done differently is his hair. I wish they had done a different hairdo than the same hairdo from the last Chucky, because it almost makes him look like dated, because that hairdo from the old doll from the 80s was almost dated then, and then now we've got the same hairdo. I don't know what it is about the hair that throws me off, but it is weird. And it's like this big old head, and then the hair is like a helmet. So I know that's really nitpicky, but as a woman, we do notice these things, and I'm like, why did they use the same hairdo?
Well, there's only one more thing. I know that there are a lot of movies going on. You have people that are going to be in and out of the theater within the next month or so. But they've got a win a life-size Chucky doll contest going on. So if you go in the movie theater,
no, thank you.
So if you go in the movie theater and you see a Child's Play box, it looks exactly like the box that they've been promoting that this Chucky comes in. You can step inside the box and you're able to take pictures. So it's actually your size. And then you step in, you take some pictures, you share it to Instagram and hashtag it with Child's Play, Buddy Sweeps and Child's Play movie. If they pick you, they'll send you a replica of the Chucky doll that will be in the new movie. So
wow.
Or they could not.
Yeah.
That's fine with me, too.
Look, I'll just win, and then you can just send that to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Send to somebody you don't like.
No, thank you. Exactly. Hey, got some ideas.
I don't see either of you not stepping into that box.
Oh, I totally will.
Oh, for sure.
I totally will. But like I said, if I win, I'll just forego the prize and be like, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
You just keep the doll, though.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, that's exciting. Does it say when? I guess it's in small print, so we can't see. I was wondering when it ends, the sweepstakes, but I guess it will be way after the movie comes out, because you have to go to the movie to win. So that makes sense. Sorry, I'm just over here deductive reasoning to myself here. Okay, so on to my news real quick. I just thought, I read this story and I'm like, this bitch has got some fucking nerve, man. Holy crap. We always hear about jaded exes hiring hitmen to take out their exes. We've heard that before. This lady not only she went to her boyfriend. First of all, she's a New York cop who had been like awarded, she's very pretty. And she wanted her current boyfriend to find a hitman to take out her ex-husband and her boyfriend's daughter. So she got her boyfriend to pretend. Well, he was pretending because he went to the FBI and then they did a whole sting and he was wired. But how the fuck do you have the balls to tell your dude, okay, kill my ex-husband, find a dude to kill my ex-husband and also your daughter? Like, what? Anyway, her name is Valerie Cincinelli. She's 34. She was arrested Friday and charged with commission of murder for hire. Prosecutors say she urged her boyfriend to hire a hitman to kill her husband. Allegedly also wanted the boyfriend's own teen daughter killed by contract. The boyfriend told FBI of the heinous plan and turned a cooperator with investigators. Suspect said ex should die in the ghetto so it wouldn't look suspicious. She withdrew $7,000, which boyfriend turned into gold coins for planned hitman. Agents showed Cincinelli a staged photo of her ex pretending to be dead. So they went to her ex and told him what was going on, and in order for her to finish the whole series of things, they took a picture of him dead, quote unquote, and then showed it to her to prove that the hitman carried out the plan.
They really went all full board with that,
dude,
though.
They really did cover every possible scenario, every single thing. They wanted to make sure that this bitch is going down. Like they did not get ahead of themselves whatsoever. Prosecutors have yet to reveal any motives Cincinelli had in the case. Cincinelli will appear before a judge on Monday after being suspended from the force. Yeah, so apparently, when they showed her the picture, she, of course, did her whole, oh, God, no, And she even went as far as to instruct her boyfriend to kill the daughter first, and then wait a month and kill her ex-husband because she didn't want it to look suspicious.
Nice.
And but apparently he didn't listen to her and went ahead and pretended that the ex was dead instead. I'm not quite sure her feelings about that, but then her dad comes up and he's like, she would never do something like that. She was set up, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, they have every single second of this situation on tape. Good luck, dude. What a fucking amount of balls to sit there and tell your boyfriend to kill his daughter too. I mean, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's
for sure.
I'll be
and on that note.
Well, you know what's even more fucked up is you've got probably tons of stories like this out there.
Totally, but I can see people being salty enough to want their ex killed, but asking your boyfriend to kill his daughter? What the fuck? That was an interesting one. So anyway, I wanted to save Moni's for last because it is, she's, obviously we're going to discuss some Game of Thrones, and our topic today is dragons, so I figured perfect segue into our main topic. So Moni, would you like to take the helm?
Yeah, actually, super quick, though. Just wanted to, this is completely not related to Game of Thrones or dragons, but it is related to fucked up crimes because I'm sure some of our listeners have heard about this week, and I just wanted to address it because it is a horrific, sensationalized story right now. So basically, and it's not in the show notes, I'm just going to run through it real quick, but my friend actually told me about it. This woman went into a mommy group, a local mommy group, and was like, hey, who's all pregnant right now? Basically to lure people in her area. Yeah, to say that they were pregnant. And so by Christy's reaction, she knows where this is going. Mm-hmm. Basically, she told this young girl that she was going to help her out by bringing her some old baby clothes. And when she arrived at the house, they strangled the pregnant woman, to death, and they cut the baby out of her. And actually, they got away, they being this woman and her boyfriend, for a little bit because I guess simultaneously a baby was dropped off at, oh my gosh, blanked out, fire station. And so people thought that that was the baby. So by the time that the DNA results came back and everything else, they found out that wasn't the baby and that it was out there somewhere. So long story short, this woman who killed the pregnant teen got away with this baby for a little while. And the baby's actually brain dead right now on life support, with the teen girl's parents now having custody of the child, opting to keep it on life support in the hopes that some kind of miracle will occur and that this baby will be viable and able to live on its own. But it's not looking good right now. And in the meantime, obviously, all the court stuff is happening for this woman who, let me get her name just so we can blast the bitch. Ochoa Clarissa Figueroa. Yeah, Clarissa Figueroa is the name of the woman who is now in custody along with her boyfriend, Pete Potar Bobak, for stealing this baby. And there's a lot of speculation as to why she did this. And I don't think it fucking matters. I think
it doesn't. Well,
she needs to fry.
They said that she lost a baby and that she snapped. I'm like, I'm sorry, but no, that's not.
Yeah, shit happens to everyone. You ain't Daenerys Targaryen. You can't just go burning everyone's shit down because your life didn't go the way you wanted. So, and with that segue.
With that note, yeah. So when Game of Thrones,
to this, Game of Thrones. By the time you've listened to this episode, you will probably have already seen the finale, which actually airs tonight. We usually do our shows on Sunday mornings. And how are you guys feeling? I'm going to go to Yardley first. What are your emotions like right now going into the last Game of Thrones forever?
You know what? I'm good. On Behind the Iron Throne, it's a podcast that I'm on, and we of course we talk about every episode, even in the off season. And I've been saying for a couple of seasons, like I'm ready for it to be over. You know, kind of to get some closure and to kind of move on. There are a lot of people who aren't ready for it to be over. And of course, this season has been kind of hot as far as, different people and how they feel about how they're closing out. But tonight, to be honest with you, like I was thinking maybe there are just a few storylines that, at least at minimum for me, I need to get some closure on. One is Bronn, because he's like a wild card that nobody's even talking about going into the episode. So I kind of want to figure out. I don't really care about Bronn to see if he's going to finally get his castle. I just got a feeling that he's going to do something that's going to be shocking in this episode. Of course, the whole John Danny thing, Arya arcs, you need to get resolutions for. But I'm also curious for some characters that we left a couple of episodes ago, like Brienne. She's got to be in this episode, so what's that going to be about? You know what I mean? So for me, as long as the main characters get their arcs closed out, regardless of how I feel about it, because I understand that this is their story, and I'm stepping into their world. Nobody made them come into my house. I chose to let it, happen like that.
True.
So I'm going to be able to take whatever they give me, but I think that this episode is probably going to fly by. Seeing it's the last episode, and I don't even know, is this just going to be an hour tonight, Moni?
I think so, yeah. I think it's only an hour, which I'm like, how are they going to, give this the conclusion that we all can live with, even just with the amount of characters still left in an hour?
Well, so you think, do y'all think they pretty much, if there's anything shocking or surprising, it has to be done by the midpoint? Yeah. Because you have to. I don't know, how are they going to do it? Are they going to show like a montage at the end to show how a lot of the other characters made out? Is there going to be a time jump? Was it a budget issue? Like, why didn't they do an 8-episode season? Why is this 6 episodes? Would you have died if you had to give us a little bit, like, of full closure for some of these bajillion characters in this show? My God. we don't know how these contracts work out. And to be honest with you, I mean, it's contracts, and then no matter how much we love it, a lot of those people are like, yo, I'm ready to do something else. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's contracts who wants to stay and who wants to go. So it's a lot more stuff, you know.
A lot
See,
of
I
moving
work in
parts.
production houses, and
Yeah.
just whenever you hear people who are like, "Well, why don't you just do this?" It's like you have no damn idea
Yeah.
what all goes on into
Yeah.
these decisions. But
Well-
I'm ready to move on. But I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, I agree with you, Yardley. I'm not mad at the episodes. I still like
No.
it's one of my all-time favorite shows.
For
I was a
sure.
little disappointed that things were kind of rushed. It's been kind of like a roller coaster ride this season. It's like some of these
Yeah.
episodes were go down as the best to me of all time. And then there's kind of it was like after the battle of the Night King, everything just was so dramatically rushed that and people in order to make the ending fit, they had to change these characters that have been behaving in a certain pattern for 10 years and now all of a sudden are changing to fit the narrative that they can conclude, and that bugged me. It is what it is. I know that there's nothing to be done about it, and I can only hope that at the end it makes sense. I was just reading an article right before we started that Sophie Turner says that we're all going to be extremely disappointed. I don't know what that means.
Oh,
And
shit.
Well, yeah.
and then also
Way to
read
on it before you even do it.
Well, I mean, true enough. I mean, even without giving spoilers here, though, a lot of the things, nothing here should be surprising that's happened because they
No.
have laid the groundwork. I think what the problem is like this season it became more of a TV show. Like when I got into Game of Thrones, I didn't get into it for the big battles and all of that. It was the character moments and the character development and the twists and turns, whatever this way. And I think what it is when they took that year off to do all the production on all the special effects and all of that stuff. I think we had to sacrifice, a lot of these buildups that we wish that we would have had.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would totally take less battles or less expensive battles to have had Lena Headey and Cersei have more things to do this season.
Right.
I would totally trade in.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, so that, Daenerys and Jon could have scenes that are longer than like a minute. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I felt like they used the dragon as a way to get rid of a lot of story holes and plots that we were waiting to see come to fruition. And that's kind of what pissed me off. Like, I knew Dany was going to be nuts. I mean, let's be honest. She's been showing this build-up for quite some time.
Yeah, that was not a surprise.
No.
I don't know why people are so outraged.
No, I'm not outraged by that at all. I was like, well, I was kind of like, no, but then I'm like, I saw that coming.
I'm sad about it,
Yeah.
but you're not like, that wasn't out of character, y'all.
It wasn't the fact that she did it. It was the fact that they like Cersei. I was kind of hoping for more of like a confrontation with her instead of like a castle falling on her. I get it was nice a way to go because Jaime was with her, and then they came together again. They died together.
That's a nice way to go.
Blah blah blah. I mean, I think she deserved something better. Maybe her throwing her into a pit of the wildfire or something. I don't know, but. So I get that piece of it. I also read, now this is interesting, Bronn's character and Cersei's character could not work together because they had a really bad breakup.
Yeah.
And it caused like major stress on the set. And so that's why they kept those two characters apart, like as far as the story. Yeah, like they, I guess, had a very contentious relationship and breakup. And it ended up making things really difficult. So I'm like, I wonder how much that affected the storyline,
That dragon pit. Yeah, maybe that dragon pit scene makes a lot of sense with him, like telling Podrick, hey, let's go have a beer. And that was like right before, Cersei came in. So you can kind of see some of those things. And one more thing, and I know we got a lot of dragon stuff to talk about. Well, how is it that Arya can bring in Gendry and everybody says that's who she is and it's all cool, but when Jaime does the same thing to Brienne, everybody's friggin' outraged? Why is that?
I think we all wanted something better for Jaime. if that makes any sense. Like,
Well, no, I'm just talking about the situation.
I know.
Like Arya did the exact same shit, and everybody's like, "You go, girl,"
because
and then
he
Jamie
wasn't
does
like
the
a
same
main
shit.
character, you know,
Yeah.
like he with Jamie and you, we have been standing Jamie and Brienne or Brienne and Tormund for years. Like one of them should, you know, Brienne is such an awesome character. Let her be with somebody, let her find some love, let one person in this fucked up mess find some happiness. And she was kind of mine. I was kind of rooting for her. So when this whole shit went down and Jamie starts showing some decent
That he was just-
behavior, it
Well,
was
they took
like,
him on a big
yay.
hero arc. Like,
But
Yeah.
Arya
he's
never was
always-
somebody who was going to be a lady somewhere and find
No,
love. But
yeah.
they took
But here's
him
the
on a
thing.
big hero arc.
But
So-
he's always been in love with Cersei, and that's
I
been
know.
unquestionable.
Oh yeah,
But
that
you-
doesn't surprise me. But it was
I
sad
mean-
that Brienne of Tarth was reduced to a crying woman in a
In her
house
house
coat.
robe.
You know?
Yeah,
But
like
here's the other
crying
thing.
outside the
And I know
castle
we're
in her house
getting into,
coat.
like, I know we're getting into just talking about Game of Thrones, but I will say this: when they were at Winterfell, right before the dead were arrived, and Jamie went there and was saying, "Hey, he wants to fight for the living." Something that he said was, "Hey, you know, everything that I did it for my family, and I do it all again." And that was right before Brienne stepped up to vouch for him. So he was essentially saying that no matter what's happening, I'm fighting because everybody has to fight in this moment. But
I'm out.
I'm still down with my fucking family.
Yeah,
So
I get it.
he-
It
It didn't
just,
surprise me, not
I
at
was-
all. But
I was
I don't compare it to
surprised.
the Arya situation either.
I was
So-
surprised they took that to that place with Brienne. I really never thought that they would actually hook up. I really didn't. I thought they were just going to be buddies forever, that they wouldn't put that scenario out there because they had been pals and had been on, you know, had each other's backs for years. So when they
Absolutely.
took it to that place, I was like, ooh, plot twist. Like maybe
But
they're
that-
going to take it another direction now. And that, no,
That
they
was
did
the
not.
real- the real sex scene was the knighting, and they should have just left it at that.
Totally. That was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would have been good with that. Like, if they were going to have her hook up and go through all of that, to then completely turn it around in one episode and make it, haha, just
Yeah.
kidding. It was like, what? Like, why even do that? Like, what was the point? Like, I just didn't see a big. Now, Arya she's never going to settle down. I knew when she hooked up with that dude, it was a one night stand. I was not surprised. I was shocked that he proposed to her, but I wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh, they're going to live happily ever after. She's just, I mean, and Jamie isn't either, but he's older. So I was thinking, okay, he's wiser, older. He's ready to like get some kind of a healthy situation under his belt because he's been in toxic land for his whole life. So I was like thinking, okay, well, they put this out there, so it must be something. It must mean something, but it didn't mean shit. So that was like my like, what the fuck moment. Arya, no, Arya's never gonna end up with somebody. She's just the wildflower assassin who's really badass. That's my opinion. What do you think, Moni?
What I do think, actually, because I kind of spoke my piece on that, but as we were transitioning into dragons, and we could talk about Game of Thrones specifically all day,
Oh,
but
totally.
to the last dragon that is left,
Yeah.
do you guys think that that Daenerys is going to ask the dragon to Dracarys on on Jon, and he's going to try to burn Jon, and Jon doesn't burn because he's a Targaryen? Do you think that she's going to try it and the dragon's going to refuse and burn her? Do you think Jon's going to have to slay the dragon, or like none of the above?
Well, we know that Danny can't be burned because of that whole Dothraki and whatever. We know that Jon can be burned because he got burned at Castle Black in season 2 or 1 or one of those when the White came. So I don't know why. You know, I guess they could retcon that, but I don't know. I don't want to see Jon fight no dragon. Then to me, it just kind of
It's already happened. It went poorly.
Yeah, exactly. And his answer to that was like yelling, apparently. But I don't.
I think
I don't know. Honestly, I hoped all of the dragons were dead. My prediction was that at the end of this, there really wasn't going to be any more magic. There wasn't going to be any more dragons. It was going to be a hard reset.
yeah.
And I still kind of hope that that's the case, but I don't know. You know, we'll see.
I think this is when we're going to see Bronn is he's going to come in and try to kill the dragon and Dany because this dragon's destroying his castles, and he wants a fucking castle. So,
Or maybe he'll kill Tyrion because that was the deal.
right.
Maybe he might kill Tyrion for something or another because there's I don't know. He's just been absent so long that maybe that's another problem.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are a little bit too invisible.
I think maybe, and I could be completely off, that Tyrion might end up on the throne. I don't know why. I just have this feeling because of the way Danny kind of foreshadowed a few things with a couple of comments, and I was kind of like, I wonder if that motherfucker's going to end up on the throne, which would be awesome because I love him.
Throne, just go back to the Seven Kingdoms and keep it moving.
If he dies, I'm going to cry. I mean, I know it really might happen, but ugh.
I predict it's either going to be Sansa or Tyrion. I don't think it's going to be Jon Snow. I think that's what everybody thinks it's going to be, and they're going to be like, surprise. Or they could just be like, yeah, it's Jon Snow, whatever. This is what is always going to be Jon Snow.
If you watch this show, that's all Jon Snow's been saying is he didn't want it. So it'd be a surprise to him as well.
But they all everybody wants him to want it, and everybody wants him on it, so...
Just go back to the Seven Kingdoms. Everybody rules their spot. And
why should we do that?
Before the Targaryens were there, just go back to the way it was. I mean, to me, I just feel like that's the way it's heading.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no more King's Landing to deal with, so everybody should be good. That's been wiped out, so... All right.
Come on, let's
go with our dragons. So I decided to kind of do an interesting twist on our dragons. First, I will do our references. The main references I have for this is Smithsonian, Animal Planet, and BBC. You would be shocked at how many people are now starting to wonder if maybe dinosaurs and humans coexisted for quite a spell there. And there's a lot of history in the reason why they're thinking about this and trying to go into it a different route. But again, this is all speculation. Nobody's officially come to the table and said this happened. So we're going to do a little bit of did the actual dragon really exist? And kind of the history around and the stories around people interacting with dragons. So really quick, the history of dragons. Throughout human history, people have been fascinated with dragons, which have appeared in the myths and legends of almost every world culture. I would think it's safe to say that dragons are basically dinosaurs. That's my theory. They were discovered, or their bones were discovered, in a time that didn't have science to explain it. So, dinosaurs weren't officially discovered as dinosaurs until the 1800s. So that's a lot of centuries of people finding these giant-ass bones and wondering what the fuck that is, and ended up coming up with dragons. That's the story now. Now, did they coexist together actually for a time? More and more evidence is surfacing that dinosaurs/dragons and humans coexisted for a time. That's going to be a lot of the conversation we will have today. Are some of these legends possibly true? And there were species of dinosaurs we would call dragons all the way up to just a few hundred years ago. These reports span several cultures and religions. No other creature in the world has had such a far-reaching influence on the minds of so many people. Yardley?
Well, all right. Well, let's talk about some of the alleged use of dragon bones as far for medical purposes are concerned. So back in AD 420 through 477, Chinese medical scholar Li Zhao had published some uses of the dragon bones. I'm going to read off a little recipe that this person concocted up. So, for using dragon bones, first cook odorous plants, bathe the bones twice in hot water, pound them to powder, and put this in a bag of gauze. Take a couple of young swallows, and after taking out their intestines and stomach, put the bags in the swallows and hang them over a well. After one night, take the bags out of the swallows, rub the powder and mix it into medicines for strengthening the kidneys. The efficacy of such a medicine as it is are divine. Now, okay. Well, first of all, these instructions, just cook odorous plants. Well, what does that even mean? Like, is that sweet-smelling plants? Is it rotten plants or whatever? So basically, you're doing like a bone broth, apparently. This is what they're doing. Now, if there was dragon bone broth, I would totally eat some pho out of that.
Hell yeah.
But Yeah, but
Little dragon foe.
yeah, but taking out the swallow's intestines and putting that bag in it and hanging it over a well, I would definitely like to know like what that stage does.
Yeah.
But apparently, people were really into, because I guess, and a lot of times you're always going to have the people who are more educated, and that's where the power comes from. So people will believe you, anyway, if you
Absolutely.
can't read, blah, blah, blah. So you have to take people's words for it, especially when it comes to medicine back then. But in traditional Chinese medicine, dragon bones are prescribed as treatment for numerous ailments, from madness to diarrhea to dysentery. Most fragments and powders sold in Chinese pharmacies as dragon bone come from fossil remains of extinct animals unearthed from China's renowned fossil beds. Although the times that dragons first appeared in myths isn't known for sure, they can be traced back as far as approximately 4000 BC. Dragons are said to have been able to live almost anywhere, depending on the type of dragon mentioned. Their habitats range from the center of the earth to the middle of the ocean. They could also be found in caves, fire, and anywhere dark and damp. You know what? In my perception of dragons, it's always been they've been in a cave. What have y'all
Yeah.
ever
Yeah, me
thought
too.
about
Yeah.
the water ocean dragons?
I haven't, but I know that's. I believe I've read so much about dragons the last couple of days that I'm like I'm now a walking dragon dictionary. Nordics, like Vikings, believed that dragons were in the ocean, which is why they had one on their boat to like scare off all the other sea monsters that were in the
Oh,
water.
that's cool.
And then Chinese had a water dragon, but they had other dragons too. But yeah, so I'm with you. Caves were always kind of the thing where coming probably from the England dragon, which is the typical.
Smog. He
Yeah,
ruined it for us. Yeah.
yeah.
So, on the inside front dust jacket of his 1995 book, Dragons, A Natural History, Dr. Carl Schucker noted that dragons have been found in an astounding number of places. Dragons and their near relatives have found niches in every ecosystem on the planet, from the mountains of Greece to the forests of northern Europe, to the volcanic plain of Mesoamerica, to the river valleys of China, and have, as a consequence, become deeply embedded in the human culture. Shucker even included a world map showing the existence of dragon legends and cultures on every continent except Antarctica. 1,000 years ago, dragons were such familiar creatures that what they looked like and how they behaved was common knowledge to every man, woman, and child, wrote Dr. Peter Hogarth and Val Cleary in their 1979 book, Dragons. No matter where they lived, everyone could describe the dragons and dragon behavior. The depictions vary in certain ways. Some only had two legs, some had horns, wings, longer bodies, or necks. Each region had their own dragon type.
Yeah, so that was really interesting for me to find out is there, I mean, we know dragons and we know Europe knows dragons and we know China, of course, has dragons, but to have a dragon, a type of dragon known for thousands of years on every continent was really interesting to me because thousands of years ago, there was no inter-country traveling or intercontinent traveling. It was just what you know in your own space. So I found that interesting. And then also they brought this up, and I thought that was really, I had never thought about it. I used to be really into the Chinese calendar, especially when I was a kid and first learned about Chinese food and, became a Chinese food fanatic. On the Chinese calendar, it's all goes by year, and there's an animal for each year, and all the other animals except for the dragon exist in the world. So I found that as interesting that why would they throw a dragon in there with all the other animals that actually are, roaming around. So anyway, I will go back. The earliest attested dragons resemble giant snakes. Dragon-like creatures are first described in the mythologies of the ancient Near East and appear in ancient Mesopotamian art and literature. Stories about storm gods slaying giant serpents occur throughout nearly all Indo-European and Near Eastern mythologies. Beliefs about dragons vary drastically by region, but dragons in Western cultures since the High Middle Ages have often been depicted as winged, horned, four legs, capable of breathing fire. Dragons in Eastern cultures are usually depicted as wingless, four-legged, serpentine creatures with above-average intelligence. Dragon history. In 2000 BC, And this was one of the first stories that I could find that was dragons actually in a written story. There, before 2000 BC, and I didn't include any of that, although it is fascinating. There are tombs of like really important people with dragons, drawn on the walls or carved in objects or things like that. So, and we're talking not just in China, India. There's a ton of evidence about dragons in India, I found out, which I had no idea. But we're going to go hit straight to the actual documented on paper dragon stories. So in 2000 BC, the famous Epic of Gilgamesh records the slaying of the monster Humbaba. I'm sorry if I'm completely destroying these words, so excuse my ignorance. In Mesopotamia, Humbaba was the terrifying guardian of the cedar forest of Amanus. The powerful Mesopotamian god Enlil placed Humbaba there to kill any human that dared disturb its peace. Humbaba was a giant creature, terrifying to look at. Sometimes he is pictured as a large humanoid shape covered with scale plates. His powerful legs were like that of a lion, but with the talons of a vulture. His head had bull's horns, and his tail was like a serpent. Alternatively, some sources gave Humbaba the form of a dragon that could breathe fire.
So in the Old Testament, Daniel was said to kill a dragon in the Bible. King Cyrus challenged Daniel's refusal to worship the idol Baal. Daniel revealed to the king a conspiracy on the part of the priests to eat the food offered to Baal, making the god seem real. Not only were the deceptive priests executed, but Daniel was allowed to destroy their idol and the dragon that was being worshipped. In the brief narrative of the dragon, Daniel killed the dragon by baking pitch, fat, and hair to make cakes that caused the dragon to burst open upon consumption. In the Hebrew Midrash version, other ingredients served the purpose of destroying the dragon. England history described how the Briton king Morvidus was killed in 336 BC by a great dragon that rolled from the Irish Sea and gulped down the body of Morvidus as a big fish swallows the little one. We see that symbolism a lot. Many of the more spectacular early accounts of dragons were provided in the 4th century by Alexander the Great and his men after invading India. One account was reported by Alexander the Great himself, who claimed that he had seen an enormous hissing serpent lurking within a dank cave, and that the local tribes had worshipped it as a god, and his lieutenant, Onesitrius, I don't even know if I just read that very quickly.
You were closer probably than me.
One Secretus, apparently, was also reported.
Sorry, that's
that there lived in India enormous serpents measuring 100 to 200 feet long.
So this is interesting because there are accounts of such creatures in India going all the way back to the 1st century, when the Greek historian Strabo described fearsome winged reptiles in his book, Geography book, I'm going to go with 15, Roman numeral, okay,
better than me,
on India, of which he says, in India there are reptiles 2 cubits long with membranous wings like bats, and that they too fly by night, discharging drops of urine black and drops of sweat, which putrefy the skin of anyone who is not on his guard. Gross. Also from India is the account from the 3rd century historian Flavius Philostratus, who also claimed that India was home to dragons, and not only a habitat for them, but by his accounts, absolutely crawling with them. He wrote in his The Life of Apollos of Tyana, the whole of India is girt with dragons of enormous size, for not only the marshes are full of them, but the mountains as well, and there is not a single ridge without one. Now the marsh kind are kind of sluggish in their habits and are 30 cubits long, but they have no crest standing up on their heads. Some very intriguing early accounts of historical dragons can be found in the writings of the great 5th century Greek historian Herodotus, who often referred to as the father of history for his systematic method of recording events. According to the famous historian, these monsters lived in spice groves and frankincense trees, and he told that workers made a habit of driving them away with smoke before harvest. And he once wrote of these creatures, there is a place in Arabia, God dang it, I'm having trouble with words today.
It's okay.
Situated, we all are apparently.
Yeah, well, these are some hard words.
Words are hard, and it's early. Situated very near the city of Buto, to which I went on hearing of some winged serpents. And when I arrived there, I saw bones and spines of serpents in such great quantities as it would be impossible to describe. The form of the serpent is like that of a water snake, but he has wings without feathers, and as like as possible to the wings of a bat.
In the 8th century, we have the curious account given by St. John of Damascus, who wrote that during a battle against Carthage, a huge dragon measuring 120 feet long had appeared behind the Roman army to approach them. The army had then reportedly attacked and killed it, and had the skins sent to the Roman Senate, although what happened to it after that no one knows. This report is quite curious because it is a matter-of-fact account without any obvious embellishment and sitting within other more mundane chronicles of the battle. He would even go so far as to state that these dragons were not magical creatures in any way, but rather just large reptilian animals. In later centuries, we have the tales of the great explorer Marco Polo, who traveled around Asia, Persia, China, and Indonesia in the late 13th century. He brought back all manner of fantastical tales of these exotic lands, their people, and their animals. Some of these reports included what can only be described as dragons. Within Polo's work, The Travels of Marco Polo, there is a passage concerning a place in the Far East that he called Karajan, which was apparently infested by the fierce beasts, and which he describes. Here are found snakes and huge serpents, 10 paces in length and 10 spans in girth, which means 50 foot long and 100-inch circumference. At the forepart, near the head, they have 2 short legs, each with 3 claws, as well as eyes larger than a loaf and very glaring. The jaws are wide enough to swallow a man. The teeth are large and sharp, and their whole appearance is so formidable that neither man nor any kind of animal can approach them without terror. Others are of smaller size, being 8, 6, or 5 paces long.
In her book, British Dragons, Jacqueline Simpson brings to light several dragon legends, including one that in 1866 was reported to have originally occurred in 1405. Close to the town of Buras near Sudbury, there has lately appeared to the great hurt of the countryside a dragon, vast in body, with a crested head, teeth like a saw, a tail extending to enormous length. Don't a lot of these just sound like Komodo dragons?
Not 120 feet long, but yeah, well, I mean they do sound like them.
But we always, whenever we're listening to this, everybody's an unreliable narrator, though, in these stories.
Oh, totally, yeah, I mean? Totally.
So, a lot of alcohol back then.
A lot of these descriptions just kind of remind me of this. But having slaughtered the shepherd of a flock and devoured many sheep, there came forth an order to shoot at him with arrows the workman of the Lord, on whose estate he had concealed himself, being Sir Richard de Waldegrave, Knight. That's just too much.
Yeah.
But the dragon's body, although struck by the archers, remained unhurt, for the arrows bounced off his back as if it were iron or hard rock. These arrows fell upon the spine of his back, gave out as they struck it a ringing or tingling sound, just as if they had hit a brazen plate. They then flew away off by reason of the hide of this great beast being impenetrable. Thereupon, in order to destroy him, all the country people around were summoned. But when the dragon saw that he was again about to be assailed with arrows, he fled into the marsh or mer, and there hid himself amongst the long reeds and was no more seen. Yeah, it was, yeah.
I would too.
I don't know. I mean, hey, Moni, are you, if you and your family and all of your friends end up shooting a volley of arrows into something and it bounced off, are y'all going to come back for more, or like what?
No, nope, done.
Just like, that's what I'm saying. I would have thought it.
So 16th century seems to have been a dragon hotbed in England. Conrad Gessner, who was a great naturalist in the 16th century and wrote of dragons as if they were any other mundane animal, and gives one description of a beast seen in the 10th century of a dragon seen in Ireland with a horse-like head, a thick, powerful tail, and stumpy clawed legs. Another famed 16th century naturalist by the name of Ulysses Aldrovandus also wrote seriously of dragons and related several tales of beasts, such as that of the herdsman who had been driving his herd of cattle in rural Bologna, and when he encountered a small dragon that had blocked his path and hissed at him. I'd kick the little thing. The herdsman had then apparently killed the creature, and saved the carcass. Aldrovandus claimed that to have come into the possession of the body and to have even mounted it and spent a lot of time contemplating the specimen, speculating that it might have been a juvenile dragon. Where the body went is anyone's guess, but he did have a watercolor portrait made of it. The 16th century is actually a treasure trove of real dragon encounters. In 1543, the historian Gessner wrote of a dragon-like creature in Germany, which he describes as having feet like lizards and wings after the fashion of a bat with an incurable bite. The historian and author Charles Gould would write of another historical case of the era concerning a man named Cardin, of which he says, Cardin states that he resided in Paris. He saw 5 winged dragons in the William Museum. These were biped and possessed wings so slender that it was hardly possible that they could fly with them. Cardin doubted their having been fabricated since they had been sent in vessels of different times and yet all presented the same remarkable form. Bellonius states that he had seen whole carcasses of winged dragons carefully prepared, which he considered to be the same kind of which could fly out of Arabia and into Egypt. They were thick about the belly, had 2 feet and 2 wings, whole like those of a bat, and a snake's tail.
Another rather interesting description of dragons was given in the early 16th century tome called Aberdeen Bestiary, which goes into great depth on the appearance and behavior of the creatures and treats them as if they were completely real. One passage reads, "The dragon has a crest, a small mouth, and narrow blowholes through which it breathes, and puts forth its tongue. Its strength lies not in its teeth, but in its tail, and it kills with a blow rather than a bite. It is free from poison. They say that it does not need poison to kill things because it kills anything around which it wraps its tail. From the dragon, not even the elephant. From the dragon, not even the elephant, with its huge size, is safe. For lurking on paths along which elephants are accustomed to pass, the dragon knots its tail around their legs and kills them by suffocation." Moving into the 17th century, we have an account from 1619 in which a nobleman named Christopher Shoreham saw a great flying dragon in Essex, England, to which he reported, "On a warm night in 1916, while contemplating the serenity of the heavens, I saw a shining dragon of great size in front of Mount Pleiades, coming from the opposite side of the lake. A cave that is named Flew, moving rapidly in agitated way, seen flying across. It was of a large size, with a long tail, a long neck, reptile's head, and ferocious gaping jaws. As it flew, it was like iron stuck in a forge when it pressed together that scatters sparks. At first, I thought it was a meteor from what I saw, but after I diligently observed it alone, I understood it was indeed a dragon from the motion of the limbs and the entire body."
In 1658, there was a published book called History of Four-Footed Beasts, which is like some of the zoological compendiums we looked at earlier, gave various descriptions of real animals and their behaviors. Once again, sitting there amongst the various detailed descriptions of known animals is a startlingly in-depth section of dragons, which explains them as it would any other normal animal. I love compendiums. I actually have them, like just the rough artwork and kind of the opinions of the things that people discover.
Right.
Those things are great. But the passage read, "This serpent is reputed to be 9 feet or rather more in length and shaped almost in the form of an axle tree of a cart, a quantity of thickness in the midset, and somewhat smaller at both ends. The former part, which he shoots forth as a neck, is supposed to be we're going to say 3 foot 4 inches long, with a white ring, as it were, of scales about it. The scales along his back seemed to be blackish, and so much as discovered under his belly appeared to be red. It is likewise discovered to have large feet, but the eye may be there. Be deceived, for some suppose. Oh, granted, this is written the way that the
Yeah, that's I was getting ready to apologize to you. This is literally what he wrote. Yeah.
I'm just not going off the rails
No,
here.
you're you're doing good, sweetie. Keep going.
Let's see here. It is likewise discovered to have large feet, but the eye may be there. Be deceived, for some suppose that serpents have no feet. The dragon rids away as fast as a man can run. His food is thought to be, for the most part, is a Connie Warren, which he much frequency. I'm assuming that's a bird, maybe.
It's
There's
rabbits.
likewise upon either side of him discovered two great bunches, so big as a large football, and some think will in time grow to wings, but God, I hope, will, to defend the poor people in the neighborhood, that he shall be destroyed before he grows to fledge. There be some dragons which have wings and no feet, some again have both feet and wings, and some neither feet nor wings, but are only distinguished from the common sort of serpents by the comb growing on their heads and the beard under their cheeks. He just described big ass snakes and fucking like little dragons. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, when you're looking at this stuff, you're like, he's describing like these types of totally. Yeah. Anyway, go on, Pony.
There are some big words in this one, too. So, on April 26, 1890, the Tombstone Epitaph, a local Arizona newspaper, reported that two cowboys had discovered a shot-down creature described as a winged dragon, which resembled a pterodactyl, only much larger. The cowboys said its wingspan was 160 feet and that its body was more than 4 feet wide and 92 feet long. The cowboys supposedly cut off the end of the wing to prove the existence of the creature. The paper's description of the animal fits the Quetzalcoatlus, yeah, we're going to go with that, whose fossils were found in Texas. Could this be Thunderbird or Wakinyan, the jagged-winged, fierce-toothed flying creature of the Sioux in American Indian legend? This Thunderbird supposedly lived in a cave on a mountaintop and feasted on seafood. That sounds like a lovely life.
Yes. Dragons have remained persistent right up to present day, and there are occasionally surprisingly recent sightings. In the early 1990s, there was a report from a woman out hiking in the Rocky Mountains of Alberta and British Columbia who says that she came across an actual dragon in the wilderness, much to her disbelief. The creature was in a beautiful shade of dark green and could easily blend with trees as he'd been standing by them, but the witness report that he was perched on a rocky outcropping on the side of the mountain. He was fanning his wings slightly, looking quite calmly into the valley below. I had been hiking up to this mountain when the movement of his head caught my eye. I had been this way before, and there was a group of trees on the cliff where there had been none before. I did not believe what I had seen at first, but the shape was too obvious, and he was parallel to me, about 7 bus lengths away. I was climbing up on the rock outface. He was on another. He was the most beautiful creature I had ever seen. His head was long with large eye ridge and 2 smaller bumps with triceratop-like horns on his nose. At the back of his head were 2 large horns jutting out backwards and 2 smaller horns below them. They were a grayish-white and caught the light like dull silver. His forelegs were slightly smaller than his hind legs and were gripping the edge of the cliff. He looked as though he were a quadruped. Okay. He had slightly darker dorsal ridges running from between the longest horns about halfway down his tail. As I stood there gaping like a fish out of water, the dragon turned and looked at me. He cocked his head to the side, almost like a bird, and then spread his enormous wings and vaulted off a cliff. He was absolutely elegant in the air, flapping his wings several times before banking into a glide and disappearing around the side of the mountain. My legs felt so weak that I had to sit down. I have been camping in those mountains for over 10 years, and I had never seen anything to suggest that dragons might actually exist here. But after that encounter, I began to think about it. What better place for a dragon to live than in the mountains? There are places in Banff and Jasper that nobody has ever been to, and there may be many elk and deer, possibly even bears, for it to feed on. Plenty of lakes, and the mountains themselves have many hidden caves and the like, and probably has nothing to do with the fact that I ate shrooms before this. I'm just kidding. That was
Right.
not a part of her story, but holy moly.
So something that I do think is cool about all of these, these historians and people, talking about things that they, obviously haven't seen before. I think that there is something kind of wonderful about discovering something for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Can you imagine if that actually happened, what it would be like?
Yeah,
or even
absolutely.
if you believed that happened, like, oh my gosh.
So I know at times I'm like, all they're doing is they're describing a snake and a Komodo dragon, but we've had years of having, you know what I mean? Like we know these things, of course, now. But I was thinking, there was a story a couple of years ago. It was about this, I think this huge crocodile that was walking on the golf course. I think it was in Florida.
Oh, yeah. Of course it was.
Did you see how humongous that was?
Oh,
Mary?
yeah.
Yes.
It was
Like,
giant.
I would have
thought
totally
that was a dinosaur if I was. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have been yelling dragon too. So, yeah.
I'd have been yelling, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, since we're coming back a little bit more into modern times, so even more recently in 2001, an apparent dragon was purportedly seen by naturalists investigating aquarian whales. They described it as being 2.5 foot in length, serpentine dragon with 4 limbs and a head resembling that of a seahorse. The creature apparently hovered through the air without the aid of any noticeable wings, and the startled men watched it flit about for a full 4 minutes before it descended into one of the many dark caves dotting the area. So what else could they be? Let's talk about the Nile crocodile. So native to sub-Saharan Africa, Nile crocodiles may have been more extensive ranging in the ancient times, perhaps inspiring European dragon legends by swimming across the Mediterranean to Italy or Greece. They are among the largest of all crocodile species, with mature individuals reaching up to 18 feet in length. And unlike most others, they are capable of a movement called the high walk, in which the trunk is elevated off the ground. A giant lumbering croc might be easy to mistake for a dragon, and that's what me and Moni were just talking about, the crocodile at the golf course.
Yep.
So the goanna in Australia is the home to a number of species of monitor lizards, also referred to as goannas. The large predatory animals have razor-sharp teeth and claws, and they are important figures in traditional Aboriginal folklore. Recent studies even indicate that goannas may produce venom that causes bite victims' wounds to develop infections after an attack. At least in Australia, these creatures may be responsible for a dragon myth.
Whales. All right. So others argue that the discovery of megafauna such as whales prompted stories of dragons. Ancient humans encountering whale bones would have no way of knowing that the animals were sea-based. Well, they didn't have wings, I'll tell you that. And the idea of such gargantuan creatures might well have led people to assume that whales were predatory. Because live whales spend up to 90% of their time underwater, they were poorly understood for most of human history. And as we discussed, dinosaurs. Ancient people may have discovered dinosaur fossils and understandably misinterpreted them as the remains of dragons. Chang Kui, a Chinese historian from the 4th century BC, mislabeled such a fossil in what is now Sichuan province. Take a look at a fossilized Stegosaurus, for example, and you might see why. The giant beasts averaged 30 feet in length, were typically 14 feet tall, and were covered in armored plates and spikes for defense. The human brain. The most fascinating explanation involves an unexpected animal, the human. In his book, An Instinct for Dragons, anthropologist David E. Jones argues that belief in dragons is so widespread among ancient cultures because evolution embedded an innate fear of predators in the human mind. Just as monkeys have been shown to exhibit fear of snakes and large cats, Jones hypothesizes that the trait of fearing large predators, such as pythons, birds of prey, and elephants, has been selected for in hominids. The more recent times, he argues, these universal fears have been frequently combined in folklore and created the myth of a dragon.
Yeah. So that's that. That's what we think. I think we know what Yardley thinks it is.
No, I think that I think it's cool. I mean, there's so much stuff like in the oceans, and there's so many things that we're not really peeking around in that we
No.
probably can see more outstanding versions of things that we already see. But as I mentioned earlier, just totally not surprised at how these legends get started, because like I said, we were just talking about the crocodile swimming to Greece, and we know that there are always going to be like anomalies of animals that get ridiculously big or are just remnants of things that were big. So I get why these legends are there. For me, though, I think probably the odds of there being a more ground-based something of a dragon, it makes more sense to me than the things that fly around, though. I think that's a little extra, but
Yeah.
well.
And I think it's fascinating to think about. I think that easily, probably that, what was it called? The one that starts with a G might be the thing that people, that people have seen. I think anything you don't understand is something that it isn't to you at the time. And I really like that that's one of the reasons I do this show, is that we can talk about that we don't know things, and I don't want to know actually. And we can talk about what do we think this was and not have to know, and not have to, it's kind of, sometimes science makes so many discoveries that you're just like, oh, that's all that was,
Yeah.
So anyway, I like the speculation, and it's one of the reasons I do this show, is that we get to have curiosities and then move on with our day.
Exactly.
And Moni and Chrissy, you never know. I mean, they're always discovering stuff, so there can always be more evidence to kind of add to some of this folklore.
Yeah, I mean, after all the research I did, and there was a lot of research, and originally I had given Moni and Yardley a movie to watch. I did my due diligence before I started to watch it, and it was from the Animal Planet. But you know how they got into big trouble talking about, like, they did for Shark Week, they did a movie about the megalodon and like made it like it was real, like it really was discovered, and people started watching it and realized this is not real and this is stupid and you guys are assholes. Well, apparently they did the same thing with dragons. So I start watching this because it's basically a very realistic premises where they're, and it's done as a documentary. And I didn't know what I didn't know what the where it was going when I first posted it. It was just had lots of good reviews with people going, I believe this, I can't believe this happened, and blah, blah, blah. And everybody was really loving it. So I was like, well, let's watch it and see what it says. Well, I start watching it and I'm like, this is clearly not real. Like, I can just tell it was really cheesy. But the context was interesting enough that I watched some of it until I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to force them to watch this. And it was just basically a dude who worked for a museum, believed that dragons existed, and then came across the opportunity to prove it. And again, great movie plot, but nothing I would push on as an actual conversation. So I 76 that real quick, 86 it, whatever that number is. But I think, honestly, here's my speculation on this. When they go through and they list all the possibilities of what they could be, I think it's all of them. I think it's all of these possibilities. I think they did find dinosaur bones. I think they did see whale bones and the fins look like wings. I think the human brain was is predisposed to have these thoughts and these fears. Crocodile, goanna. I also think that way, way, way back before enlightened thought, we did exist with some pre-lying ends of dinosaurs that somehow made it through, the asteroid thing. I think that we did. I mean, it's already been discovered that woolly mammoths were hunted and killed by humans. I am not above to say that we had other things that we had to kill that were, predators as well. And that caused this human brain fear through the generations when we actually began to, have real thought and became civilized in a sense. So I think it's all of them. I think there was a time that some dinosaurs were around us, and the possibility that one of these flew or was big enough to cause fear in us was there for a time and then died out. And then I think it was the others as well. I think it's all of it, because there's so many continents that have a history with the quote-unquote dragon, that it just makes sense that these would all be things that played into the scenario. So that's my thought on it. I don't think there were dragons in the 16th century. No. I don't think they were in the 1st century. I think they were way before that. And they were actually dinosaurs. And we have just grown up with that ingrained into our head because they did exist with us for a time. And then as we go on and have that fear, all these animals that we can't understand, dragons, that we can't explain. So that's my theory on it. And it was an interesting subject. I kind of threw it out there because of the Game of Thrones thing. But then once I started reading on these stories, it was really, I had no idea I would be this interested in it. But it became, I've read just about every main article on dragons you can find, and there are tons of them. So if anybody wants to go and hear more information about this, literally just search History of Dragons, and you're going to get plentiful amounts of content to read up on. So
nice.
Anybody else have any conversation about dragons, or are we dragoned out?
Oh, this is fascinating. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So Yardley, what do we got next week?
Yeah, so for next week, we talked about Game of Thrones earlier. We're talking about dragons in the main show, so I think that it's only right to dive into a movie by one of Game of Thrones' best actors, which is Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. It's called I Think We're Alone. Now, this is a movie that's been out for, I guess, maybe going on 2 years. I never got an opportunity to watch it. It also has Ellie Fanning in it, who plays Aurora in the new Maleficent movie. Mm-hmm. But this movie's been out. I would not be surprised if both of you have already seen it.
I have not.
The summary of the movie is Dale is alone in the world. After the human race is wiped out, he lives in his small, empty town, content in his solitude and the utopia he's methodically created for himself, until he's discovered by Grace, an interloper, whose history and motives are obscure. And to make matters worse, she wants to stay. All of this is taking place like post-apocalypse. Mm-hmm. Nice. So apparently this is some type of a thriller, maybe some type of a character study, but I've been curious about it. The reviews have been I guess about down the middle on it, but it's something that I've always wanted to kind of check out and just haven't. So I kind of want to make my own judgment on this. So it seems like it's going to be it seems like it'll be cool. I mean, I like Peter Dinklage, I think.
Yeah.
But apparently there's only a couple of people in the movie, so we're going to see how that works out. But I just figured that would be kind of a nice nod. Game of Thrones is ending, and we haven't really talked anything post-apocalypse in a while, so that's the route I'm going.
Awesome.
Yeah. I like both of those actors, and I'm looking forward to seeing something that I haven't actually watched or thought about before, so thank you for bringing that too.
Yeah, I've been struggling to find movies that I want to watch lately. Just, on apps and cable. I'm really having a hard time. I don't know what it is, or if we have a lull in decent content coming out, or what. I mean, the movies, it's rich with good stuff coming, or that's already here. But when I sit down and I try to find a movie, I can't. I'm just I watched something like The Great Experiment or something that had Keira Knightley and what's his name? Benedict Cumberbatch or whatever. Yeah. But it was about codes and Nazis and stuff, and it was decent. But I've turned off several movies. I'm just this sucks. This is crap. Yeah. What's going on? Where's our good stuff?
Isn't Stranger Things coming up, and then you got the Chucky next month?
Yeah, they're all coming.
That are coming out.
Yeah, and then Black Mirror drops June 5th, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I'm excited, but I saw the trailer, and I'm just
there's a lot of movie stars in it.
What was her name? Miley Cyrus is in it, and then and I'm I'm just getting a little too Americanized.
I kind of like it that they don't bring so many stars into that. So that's kind of an invasion of my territory as far as I'm concerned.
And Anthony Mackie, it's just I like Black Mirror, but I don't know if I've got hopes for this one. But I hope they kind of change my mind.
I do too, because I'm excited about it. It's one of my favorite shows. So
and it's shortened because aren't there normally 6 of those, or like how many did they put out? I heard that this one's a lot shorter. Like it doesn't have as many episodes this season.
I didn't hear. All I saw was the poster that said it's dropping in June, and I was like, oh,
I think it's only a couple of episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like 2 or something like that, or maybe 3.
I don't know.
Yeah,
what the hell?
Yeah, I don't get it, and that's why so much is riding on Miley Cyrus and
Topher Grace. Yeah,
Anthony Mackie.
Okay, I could go with Topher Grace, but Miley Cyrus. Okay,
yeah,
that's weird.
Maybe
she came in like
playing
a wrecking ball, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe Miley Cyrus. I mean, they're definitely promoting it because they're probably the biggest names that are going to be in it. So maybe Miley Cyrus's contribution might be just a specific sequence and it's not literally her. I mean, who knows? She could kick ass. So, I mean, like I said, I don't want to shit on it too much. I mean, Anthony Mackie, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? So,
well, are the episodes going to be longer?
I doubt it.
So there's going to have 2 1-hour episodes?
I mean, it could be 3. I mean, I just remember reading on this, and I heard that it was less episodes than any other one that they've done. So it could be a couple. Yeah. Well, we'll see. So we'll see. At least you'll get partial enjoyment out of it, Christy. Short period of time.
I guess we'll see. I'm excited because I love it. I'm not excited. I mean, Miley Cyrus is fine with her music, but I'm not really gung ho about her being in a show, but we'll see. Maybe she's fantastic and she'll blow me away. I'm not holding my breath.
And listen, and then we can cut out right after this, but this is how like Game of Thrones has its hand around the nuts of like pop culture. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, here he is parachuting in and explaining why the science behind dragons burning stone buildings on Game of Thrones. Like we are just so.
Oh boy.
You know what I'm saying?
Get yourself a drink, relax, calm your tits, watch the show.
Did he say it's possible, or is he saying it's not possible?
I haven't read it yet, but it's in my Twitter timeline.
Well, when he's chimed in, it's time to close the era. It's done. Like we got too many people crossing too many roads. So, I mean, nothing wrong with him. I love him. But when you got everybody chiming in and everybody trying to make sense of a show, then we're done. All right, guys. Well, thanks for humoring me about our dragon talk. And Moni, would you like to give us your closing credits? Where can we find you?
Oh, I am Rebel Moni on the Twitters and Moni Bear on Instagram.
Okay.
Right, you can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
Okay, I am at creepin_it on Twitter and creepin at Christy on Instagram. With that, guys, thank you again for all the support, and we will catch you on the flip side.